Welcome back to the lobby. Listen, I don't know what sessions you've gone to, but the ones that I have had the chance to go to, I have so many notes and I have gotten so much information. I hope you all are enjoying the sessions as much as I am. I want to thank each and every one of you for being with us today. I want to thank our sponsors, Lumina Foundation, for making this conference to be able to be free for all of you here today. And a special thank you to AT&T for providing lunch vouchers for everyone through Uber Eats. So I hope you've already ordered your lunch. I hope you're settled in and comfortable and ready for an amazing keynote luncheon speaker. So at this time, I will turn it over to Venetia to introduce our keynote.
Good morning, everyone. And as Chandra mentioned, I have been enjoying this conference. I hope you all have too. And it is my pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker. So Kathy's bio is already there on the program, so y'all can read her bio, but I will tell you from my personal side about Kathy. I'll just add a couple of sentences, not too much, but Kathy, I know, is a woman of God. She is a woman of God. She is my role model. I love Kathy. And Kathy had mentioned something in another meeting, which has stuck to me as a leader. So she had said, as a leader, keep in mind that what you need people to accomplish should never come before how accomplished we want them to leave feeling. So as a leader, keep in mind that what you need people to accomplish should never come before how accomplished we want them to leave feeling. So Kathy, like I mentioned, is my role model, and I have no more words. Like I get excited when I talk about Kathy. So Kathy, it's all yours, and I will get out of the way so others can see what I'm talking about.
Oh man. Well, I will tell you this. One of I think one of the joys is for me and my life is when people meet you and they reach out to you to do something for them. I think that's one of the greatest accolades that we can get in life is when people have encountered you in a place or space or just passing by, that they feel that you are worthy to come back to, that you impacted them in such a way that was meaningful enough. And you know what? At the end of the day, that's what I want my life at the end of it. That's about what's important to me is that when we cross people, for me, one of my greatest things in life is really letting people know that after they encounter me, that they knew I loved them. Um, Seriously, I really do mean that. Is I really want people to feel when they look at me and I'm looking at them, I want them to see that I love them in what I say, that I love them, that what I want for them, I can say it in love. And even if it's difficult, that you're able to say it in love. And that is, for many people in the world, love is a very touchy kind of word. But for me, it has no walls. I think it's important because hate is a word we've given so much resonance to, and love is one we guard. So my take is that we sort of need to flip that script and decide to give love no walls and create some real boundaries in regards to hate. So that's how I look at things. So it means that intentionally every day of my life, I want people to know that they do matter to me. And I will tell you, Manisha, when she called me and asked me to speak at this conference, I thought, oh my gosh, really? And but it was so humbling to be able to be asked and to be a part of this. And I love her, and I love Chandra, and I love Alabama Possible. I'm just telling you, because they're doing great work. And to each of you, I love you too, because you're doing a heavy lift in helping our young people to both be accomplished, but more so feel accomplished. And when Manish and Chandra asked me to speak at the conference, I will tell you, it was easy to say yes, but what I rejoiced about more was the theme, and it was changing the narrative. And I will tell you that that theme for me has such a depth that I felt very moved that I needed to talk to you all today And notice I didn't say be a keynote speaker or make a speech, but just to talk. I was very transparent with them in the fact that I wasn't going to do slides. I'm not coming to really be a speaker. This session, what I love to do is really just talk to you and just share. That's what I want to do, is to really share, to really bring across about 7 key points. I'm going to give you the points early on because, and I'm going to give you up front even before I start sharing with you, because I want you to get these, because what's probably going to happen is that you may not hear them again. I want you to see them through some of the things that I say. I also want you to be able to just connect them to the story and to this conversation that I'll share with you today throughout. There are 7 key takeaways that I want you to sort of look for as I talk or connect. But each one of these, I'd like for you to be able to, after the conference, is take each one and just resonate on it. There's 7 because there's 7 days in the week. So you can take each point and just sort of resonate on it. Think about it, just look at it, just for the heck of it. And just to see if there is a connection or if there's something you can share with someone else. But one of the first key takeaways I want you to take is first and foremost is going to be build the muscle of compassion. You don't really hear that a lot when it comes to people who are influencing or impacting other people. We think that that's a soft skill. I truly believe that post-COVID, it is a must skill. It's a must have to deal with people, because everyone coming out of COVID dealt with something. That's the key. And everybody, unless you've met everybody in the world, you don't know what my dealt with was. So therefore, in my dealt with, when I come into your space, just keep that in mind, that I've been through something too. And that means that compassion allows you to get out of the way and begin to see the person that's coming into your space first. The second takeaway I want you to have is about building the mind of willingness. A lot of times what happens is that we want to do something, but we're not willing to do it. When it comes to our young people and people in general, we really have to be willing to meet them where they are, but we have to be willing to let go of our stuff. We have to be willing to listen. We have to be willing to be compassionate, and we have to be willing that we may be wrong. There's a lot of things you have to be willing to do. But again, when it comes to people, the most complex thing ever created, we have to be willing to come away from, unlearn some things, but also be able to embrace some new things. So building the mind of willingness. The third thing is to look at the past through courageous reflection. Notice, look at the past through the lens of courageous reflection. You know, there is a lot that's going on out in the world regarding history, and it is all about things and how things need to stay the way they are. But the thing is that if things stay the way they are, that means things will never change, and that means change is insignificant. So what that means is that our past holds insight. And there are times when we have to look at our past, not just look at it, you know what I'm saying, but courageously reflect upon it. Because within it, there's good, within it, there's bad, but within it all, there are lessons that help us live a better today and a better tomorrow. So really build and look through the past through that lens of courageous reflection. The fourth thing is, don't assume that there is someone else besides you that's going to encourage the person you encounter each day. That's really amazing to me, is sometimes we take for granted. We're so busy checking off our list, doing whatever we do in our roles in life, that what we happen to forget is that for us and whomever we encounter, just like when Manisha was talking about me, is that we can't assume that there's someone else encouraging the person who's crossing my path today. So be sure to realize that you may be the only encouragement that person sees today. So don't take any encounter for granted. The fifth takeaway I want you to take is this. The worth of some, S-O-M-E, is infinite. The worth of S-O-M-E is infinite. We always talk about all. All is not near as powerful as some, because some makes an impact. When you think about some of your words that you say to people, remember they will be remembered. Not all your words will be remembered, but some of your words will. The second part of that, some of what we do to, in front of, and for others will also be recalled. So see, the infinite power, the value of some is just infinite, because some of what we say and some of what we do is going to be remembered and recalled. And guess what? It goes to my sixth one, is that it's because it will contribute to the narrative of someone else. We have the ability to be a narrative contributor. That's number 6. So some of our words, some of what we do, they're going to contribute to the narrative of someone else. Now that one was one of those powerful ones to me, because I'm like, whoop, when you really think about it, we always think about our narrative, but what we really need to begin to embrace as people who are touching young people and people who are people, period, touching each other, is, guess what? We are narrative contributors. The things we say and the things we do impact the narrative of others. And the number 7 that I want to give you is never give up. When I attended a high school that was being integrated with African Americans. I had gone to an all-Black elementary school from 1st through the 8th grade. And there was a woman whose name was Dr. Mamie Foster. She was the first Black school board member for the school board of Homewood School System. Dr. Mamie Foster was one of the most phenomenal women I had ever seen in my life. She had a head full of gray hair, always wore suits that had buttons in the front, and she wore 3-inch stilettos. And when she walked in a room, she just commanded a presence. But she was probably one of the most compassionate yet bold women I had ever met in my life. And I always looked at her and thought, God, I want to be like her. She knew that my parents, I came from a very poor family. So when we talk about poverty, I actually grew up in poverty, so much so that it rained in our home that we were growing up. We didn't have sewer. We had a septic tank that overflowed in the front yard. So it always smelled really bad. Ironically, the grass was always green though. The house was raggedy, but the grass was always green. So it did contribute to us having a really beautiful yard. My mom was a maid. She cleaned houses actually out in Shelby County. And the family that she cleaned for was absolutely wonderful. And my father was a janitor. And my dad actually ended up having about 3 jobs, working to 2:30 every morning and getting up at 6, going to one job, leaving at that job at 3, going to another at 5, and then another janitorial job at about 9 at night. So we hardly ever saw him except on the weekends. And my parents really worked hard. I remember that every piece of new carpet I ever remember getting in our home came from the people's homes that my mom cleaned over the mountain. And we always thought it was new carpet. To be able to get this carpet, it was fantastic. I mean, I watched my mom fix old furniture and everything and make it new and just be so creative. And it was amazing. What's interesting is where we lived, across the street from us were very new houses. And our house was so raggedy. And the kids would joke and laugh. But the thing is, within that home, there was so much love and there was so much understanding and there was so much encouragement that we could be whatever we want to be my parents were smart people and they were good people, but they were some of the most encouraging and loving people ever. And the biggest encouragement for us was when we went to church. And so one of the things was that was the space where we got a chance to stand and talk and give speeches and really learn a lot. Well, Dr. Foster knew how passionate my parents were, and she had been friends with our family for a very, very long time. But what she also knew was the importance of my parents wanting us to get a good education. Well, they had to integrate, and they were integrating the schools at the time. And so Dr. Foster called my parents and said, "Hey, we've got to integrate the school system. I would love for your kids to come and go to school here." And it actually was the Homewood system. My parents were ecstatic. Now the thing was that that meant that we were probably gonna have to get to the school doors at about 6:30 or 7. And sometimes we did sit outside because my parents would have to drop us off because they would have to go over the mountain and go to their jobs. Well, one of the things is very distinctive for me is the very first day that I went to school. For me, it was very traumatic because I was leaving all my friends that I had graduated the 8th grade with. Like these kids I had been with since first grade. It was like, oh my God, these kids are going somewhere else and I'm going somewhere else and I don't know anybody. It was just like, oh my goodness. I know my parents are making that sacrifice because I'm one of 10 kids, but I am like the fourth, somewhere down there. I have 3 younger siblings up under me. So it was my role to really take care of my younger siblings. And I'm just like, oh my God, this is just a huge shift. So my sisters were going to elementary school, my brother was going to be going to the middle school, and then here I was going to the high school. So I get to the high school, we've dropped everybody off. I'm the last one, and I get to that high school, go to the office, I'm good. You just are, everybody in the office is really, really nice. And I go and I'm getting into my very first class, and the very first class I get to was math. And it was 9th grade math. And I remember this so friggin' vividly. I walked in that class and there was this teacher. Now she had on a brown suit, a white shirt with a big bow. She had glasses hanging around her neck from this beaded little cord. And she had on opaque hose, low heel brown shoes. She had her hair, it was sprayed a lot with hairspray. And the thing was, she was not smiling. So I sat down and I was on the edge seat because I was one of those was coming in. They were escorting me into the class. And I sat down and I'm looking around and the kids are looking at me and, they're waving and they're speaking. And it was great. And I'm sitting there and then there is this moment, there's this problem on the board and the teacher starts to ask questions. And what does she do but call on me? And I didn't know the answer. Her reply to me was, "Where did you come from? You don't know this? This is basic math." I remember sitting there, literally shell-shocked to a certain degree. But I wanted to crawl in a hole, and all the kids just sort of looked at me. They knew because all of them had been together for years through the system. But then here was me. I remember that day as if it was a minute ago. And that particular experience for me created a narrative of being incompetent and not very smart and never being able to do math. I took that narrative with me, literally, all my life. All my life, that narrative was playing over in my head. Now, the thing is that particular narrative was one that someone contributed to that I accepted. Let me make it real clear. Those words, that some of those words, out of all the words of people telling me how smart, how awesome I was, how great I was at Western Civ and home ec and sign language and in science and every other subject, but it was those some words that ended up creating a huge narrative for me that created something and a hurdle for me that I could not seem to get past. So whenever it came in front of me, all I ever did when it came to math or numbers or anything, statistics and everything else, I always remembered that particular experience and the narrative that I had in my own head about my capabilities. That was so long ago, but that narrative has stuck with me all my life. It contributed to how I saw me. It helped me learn very early on how the words that we put forth with people, and especially with young people, how it can be able to create a hindrance, a barrier, as well as even forming condemnation and fear that stops them from seeing success anywhere else, from feeling that life or just other achievements are possible for them. And so, being that narrative contributor, that teacher at that particular point contributed to a narrative of my life that I held on to going all the way through college and everywhere else. So those few words, and then in that one moment, it impacted me. What's interesting though is when and what ends up choosing to change the narrative of your life. Well, for me, I held on to that probably for about 30 or 40 years. Held on to that, feeling never wanting to go back to school to get my master's, attempt a math class or anything else, because I felt like what she said that day was the truth. And I really didn't know how to get past it then at that time as a teen. But what I realized is that people are always contributing to your narrative, even when you get grown. You know what I mean? You don't really think about it. But the deal is that people are always contributing to our narratives all our life. It really doesn't change. You think about on the job in your performance appraisal, the feedback you get is contributing to a narrative. And you know what I'm saying? It really is happening. So it never stops. So the point is how do you help to really help us all to understand that that narrative is so impacted forever, and we often are the source of contributing to the barrier, the hindrances, the condemnation, and the fear that people have, all because of what we said, did, or did not do. So when we talk about changing the narrative, some of the narrative has to be changed by us in the role we choose to be as a narrative contributor, because it is a role we have in our life. Anything that puts us in front of people where we have a chance to pour into them, to give them advice, or to support them, we are a narrative contributor. But it goes further than that, because Manisha said it. She was always watching me. And the key is, I didn't know that. All I was doing was doing. The key is how do you do that in order to make sure that the narrative of your life is intentional? It is to be more intentional with what you say and what you do, because you never know who it's influencing. Well, I'll tell you who ended up helping me change the narrative of my life. It was my faith. But 2 years ago, I lost my son, Parker Boswell, September 17th, 3:15 p.m. Two state troopers came to our door. I'll never forget that day as long as I live. The thing was, he was killed accidentally. He died in a car accident. Hearing those words and knowing that my son was gone changed the narrative of my life. Because the thing was, nothing was going to change him being gone. There was those words forever changed my life. But they also forever changed the narrative of my life. I had written out in my head the narrative of his life, that he live long, go off to school, get his degree, get married, maybe have kids. He loved children, so he would have had probably 10. But that was the narrative that I was creating in my mind, just like we all do. We create, we think, because this is what we hope and want. But his death changed the narrative. But it actually helped me move some things around in my own narrative of my life. Because one of the things that now became a narrative, a part of my narrative of living is I now was a mother who had lost a child. So what I had to realize is that moment, just like that math moment, it was either going to hinder me, it was going to be a barrier, I was going to let it condemn every tomorrow, or I was going to have a fear about even wanting to go on with life. What I realized is that I had to choose how I was going to take that situation and what I was going to do with it. Would I move it from being a hindrance to helping me move forward? Would I take it from being a barrier to help me be able to be a builder of other people, or to build something that will keep a memory of my son? Will I take it from condemning and questioning to having the courage to look at his life and reflect on the past and be able to look at the pictures and look at the videos and hear his voice in the videos and be able to have the courage to still smile when I wanted to just cry? And would I move from the fear of who I was or wasn't to the freedom of knowing that he was in where he always wanted to be, heaven? I had a choice, and all of us have a choice in how our narrative, how we choose to write it. But one of the things that came out of my son's death was the power of being a narrative contributor. There was a paper my son wrote, the only one he got to write in college. And in that particular paper, it was for English, and he had to tell something about himself and what he wanted to do with his life. In that paper, he said, I have two great parents. So guess what? The narrative in my head of whether my son knew we loved him or if we were good parents, boom, period. He answered that question. So therefore, that narrative of the where I was going with, oh my gosh, did my son know we loved him? Did he realize how wonderful he was? That paper, he's like, they're two great parents. They're awesome. It was in the paper. I didn't have that negative piece to my narrative. The next thing in the paper was he talked about that he wanted to go to graduate school. Well, you know what? What I decided was I can do that for you. So I enrolled to take some classes in college and told them up front, I want the diploma to read that Parker for Parker. Okay, so here's this narrative. Now remember, there were things that impacted the narrative, but also too is moving forward, looking at how to contribute to the narrative. What could I do to walk in this, to build, to be courageous, to walk in this freedom, to be able to do something that would help with his memory? It's taking what could have been the thing that created this narrative of defeat to be able to look and to be determined to create this narrative of victory. So then the last thing was how my son ended up contributing to my narrative. The last quote, he put a quote in his paper, and it was really interesting. And no one has made this quote, it was his. It says, don't confine yourself when God has liberated you. Don't confine yourself. That right there was so powerful, because what had happened was my son's narrative was complete. His life ended, his narrative of what he could write. But the deal was, it really wasn't over. Because what ended up happening is after losing him, what I found out is how Parker had contributed to the narrative of the life of others. From young people who shared, Ms. Boswell, I was having a really bad day one day and was thinking about taking my life. Parker called me that day out of the blue and talked to me. A young lady who had special needs told and shared with us. She said, you know, he didn't want me sitting by myself in the lunchroom. So he would sit with me every day and nobody ever bothered me. A young boy said, Ms. Boswell, your son, I was new to the school. He saw me sitting by myself, came over, and he even brought me home sometimes from school so I wouldn't have to ride the bus, just so that he could just get to know me. He also, one of the other things is the principal at the school said, Ms. Boswell, I don't know if you knew it, but Parker actually, after every basketball game, came over and shook my hand. I could be walking in the halls and Parker would come over and say, hey, how you doing, Mr. G? All the other kids running from me. He's the one approaching me. See, the thing was, Parker contributed to the narrative of other people's lives that gave them a memory or a special moment of simply showing them that they matter, just encouraging them along the way. I want to encourage you to never give up. Never give up realizing that you may be that only source of an encouragement that a young person or people get. Sometimes there's an assumption that there's someone encouraging somebody at home or in their life. I'm going to tell you, it may not be. You may be that only source of encouragement that a person actually gets. So be intentional with some of the words you say, with the words, the things that you do in front of, to, and for people. Because I'm going to tell you, they will be remembered just like what Parker did. It will be remembered just like what Manisha said that I did, that I simply was only just being me, was simply that we are narrative contributors and the things that we do will be remembered. And to do it in such a way, to be willing to do it, looking for nothing in return. That's where that whole muscle of compassion comes into play. Is because what that does is it reaches beyond you, and it doesn't matter if anybody doesn't say thank you. It doesn't matter if they don't even realize if it was significant. All you're trying to do is to be able to simply be willing to give people something that matters and encourages them to move forward, because you are intentionally being a narrative contributor and you're willingly doing that. And you know that one day you may never know the impact of your life, but someone will remember it. And want me to tell you something? It's how Parker lived his life that there's not a day goes by that someone doesn't share about how he contributed to the narrative of love in their life. He left his story, and all of us will forever create a narrative. But at some point, that narrative where we can write it, it ends. Life ends. So that means that at the end of it, it's done for us, but what and how we've contributed to others will live on. It will live on. And I will tell you how I want to live on is I don't want just a period. I don't want questions. I don't want dots. I want exclamation points. Like, yeah, is that literally our life made a difference. I may not know it, may not see it, but all I know is that I want to definitely be able to contribute to help people and building their narratives in the most possible and loving way. So guess what? That pretty much ends what I got to tell y'all. So again, build that muscle of compassion. Build the mind of willingness. Look at the past through the lens of courageous reflection. I had to step back and look at that math situation. And I'm just going to tell y'all that I ended up having to take a finance class and I passed it. Ha! Boom, baby. Boom, baby. Because the narrative was I could do this. I also had to courageously reflect upon the life of my son. I couldn't change it. I couldn't go back. But his pictures, his laughs, the joy on his face, they matter. And so I had to courageously learn how to look back and celebrate it, even though I couldn't hold him. I've learned the worth of some is that, hey, my words matter, what I do, what I say matters. And I do realize that I am a narrative contributor. And I do realize that I can never give up, regardless of what people may do or may not do. I never know where what I have contributed to someone's narrative is going to make a difference. But what I can be very intentional about is being intentional about how I contribute. So with that, thank you all so much. It was a joy being here, and I hope that something resonated with you. Now, there's one last thing you have to do though. So as I've told you about being a narrative contributor, what I'd like for you to put in the chat, if there's a chat somewhere and I won't be able to see it, but I'd love for you to be able to type in the answer to this question. If there had to be an autobiography written about you as a narrative contributor, what would the title of that autobiography be? What would the title of your autobiography be? Because for my son, Parker, the title of his was, Well Done, Well Done. Thanks.
So I don't know where to even to start with this. I have walked away with so many nuggets, just for my own personal journey. So thank you for that. I'm hoping each of you are thinking, I see Michaela added the cheerleader. I love that. And so I encourage everyone that hears my voice to reflect on the words of Ms. Boswell today. She has done something that I do not take lightly, and that's be transparent in sharing her journey, which is so personal and very difficult for many of us to do. I don't know if many people will willingly open up as she has to a bunch of strangers, to be honest, and sharing her journey and being a contributor to all of our narratives today. This conference has, we always, construct things with one thing in mind, but you never know what the purpose truly is until it happens in the moment. And I feel like this conference has gone beyond of just providing us a moment of training, of learning and sharing with one another. But I feel in this moment that this conference is really about someone pouring into each one of us today, that we walk away better than we entered into this conference. And I feel that that's what happened for me today. And so I want to sincerely thank you, Kathy, for, again, just sharing so openly your life story, the hard parts, the difficult parts, the enlightening parts, all of it. You just laid it out there for us today. And what I'm hoping is that everyone that listened to your voice today felt a piece of that and is walking away with something that will now allow them to be a better contributor and changing the narrative for someone else. And that, to me, takes away what we thought today was about. Today has simply been about, and listen, I hope everyone enjoys the rest of the sessions, but I want you to remember this moment, that I feel like this was the purpose of this conference. Was for someone to pour into each of us, to remind us the things we say and the things we do matter. So many times we hear that sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. I wish people would stop saying that, because words have so much weight. And as Kathy has shared, the words changed the path of her life for over 30 years. So just reflect when you're in that moment of you're tired, you're frustrated, you're short patient, and someone is asking you something in the wrong moment, take a breath and remember the words that you say in that moment could change the trajectory of someone else's life for 30 years. And are you changing it for the better? And that is the question that you have to ask yourself. So Kathy, I from the depths of my soul, thank you for just being the woman that you are. Manisha, I have to say, has gone on and on and on about you. And I trust her with all that I have. And so I have to say she didn't do it justice in talking about you. You are authentic, and there are so many people that you can't say that about. And in this time, in this climate, in this culture that we're in now, it's so hard to find someone who is willing to be authentic and to share and pour into others. So thank you for uplifting the word love and not the word hate, and for sharing how we are contributors to everyone's narrative, knowingly, and more importantly, unknowingly. And so I want to again, thank you. Thank you.
Chandra, before we close out, I wanted to read out what everybody has said over here.
Sure.
Someone has mentioned, and Kathy, these are for you. Thank you for your inspiration and narrative. Thank you for your beautiful words. Don't confine yourself when God has liberated you. Thank you, Pauletta. Totally awesome. Thank you. So then now the title of the book start. One is Finisher. The other one is Empower Others for Success. A Legacy of Love. Then the other one is Narrative Contributor. And she has mentioned Miss Boswell was phenomenal. Someone has said, I'm crying ugly tears. Please, please let Miss Boswell know. Miss Boswell know how awesome she is. Sharing her pain is so very special, and I will never forget her words. My chat is disabled. I would love to have the recording. We'll send all of you the recording. Then someone else has mentioned, thank you, Mrs. Boswell, for this very impactful talk. It is very easy to lose patience with young people, but your encouragement and your 7 takeaways have challenged me to be more intentional in encouraging and building up the kids I work with through my words and action. So now you all see why she did not need any introduction. She is phenomenal.